Magandang umaga, Filipinos. Good morning. You're watching Eagle News Mornings from Canada. I'm Thomas I. Lightness, reporting from our Eagle News studio. I'm in the Western Canadian province of Alberta. My city is Edmonton, and the gang here is bringing you news from across the country. Well, good Tuesday morning. It's going to be another warm one today in Manila. Should be a high of about 36 degrees, but it's going to feel like 41. Thunderstorms forecast for later this afternoon. And later in the week, of course, keep an eye out for Tropical Storm Ambo. That's expected to blow in, so keep your eye on the sky and watch the weather and take appropriate precautions. Currently, it's partly cloudy, 30 degrees outside, and feels like 36. The air quality today rated as fair, so a good day to stay inside if you have breathing difficulties. Well, I just refilled the stock of 3-in-1, so grab yourself one, fix yourself that second cup, sit back, relax, and let's bring you up to date with what's happening in Canada. First, a look at the weather across the country. Our street scene today comes from Calgary. I used to live in Calgary back in the 80s. Great place to live. I really enjoyed my time in that city. The street scene was shot by Rose Gaviola. She shot that for us. Thank you very much, Rose. And we'll start our look at the weather on the west coast, where it's another warm day. Some clouds, highs of around 21 degrees in both Victoria and Vancouver. We go across the mountains, westward into Alberta. It's still chilly here. Cloudy and up to about 10 degrees in Edmonton. Calgary only got to 5, again, clouds in the sky. Saskatchewan, mostly sunny across the province. Regina and Saskatoon both reporting 7 degrees. In Winnipeg, it was sunny, but oh my goodness, a chilly 5 degrees there. And they get that breeze off of Lake Winnipeg, so it is chilly. It's like living next to the ocean almost. We move over to Toronto, 6 degrees and cloudy. Ottawa got up to 8, some clouds in the sky. Montreal, sunny and 15. Now, this is what surprised me is the Atlantic provinces. 3 of the 4 of them were sunny with warmer temperatures. 15 degrees across New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, and Prince Edward Island. As we go north to Newfoundland, some clouds and only got up to 9 degrees in St. John's. In the news this morning, Canada marks a grim milestone in the pandemic. There's concerns about Quebec's moves to reopen the province. Ontario has eased a lot of restrictions. We'll have a full report on that. Be careful, says our Prime Minister. Big business about to get a boost from the federal government. And we're going to have a look at what was once an ugly rock quarry. Well, it isn't anymore. You'll be surprised at what it turned into. And into the kitchen, where we'll learn how to make tuna pie. We begin with a look at the COVID-19 numbers in Canada. We're closing in on the 70,000 mark in the number of cases since the pandemic began. But the number of deaths is about to surpass the 5,000 mark. Now, most of those deaths were in Quebec, where more than 3,000 people have died from coronavirus. But you know, despite that number, in Quebec, the government seems to be intent on reopening some retail stores this week, as well as daycares, elementary schools. This is all outside the Montreal area. Okay? So with the school reopening, classes are limited to 15 students. The desks have to be spaced apart. Not everybody can use the lunchroom. You can't cram all those kids in there, so some of them will have to eat at their desks. Recess. Remember, recess, you could play with your friends. It's going to be a lot lonelier. Students will have to take turns going outside to minimize contact with other groups. Now, attendance is voluntary. Many parents in Quebec are keeping their kids home. They're just not willing to risk the health of their children. Now, we go to Montreal, the epicenter of the pandemic in Canada, not only in Quebec, but in Canada. Schools were to have reopened there next week. Now, that's been pushed back to May 25th at the earliest, maybe even a little bit later. There's a lot of concern about what's happening in Quebec. Is the province moving too fast to open things up? Premier Francois Legault says, yeah, he's concerned about Montreal. He says outside of Montreal, we've got things under control, but in that city, in Montreal, how does he describe the situation? Well, his word is worrisome. We continue to watch that situation. By the middle of this month, more than 1,300 members of the military will be working at 25 nursing homes in Montreal. In Ontario, 265 members of the military have been deployed to 5 long-term care homes. Nursing homes have had problems with staff shortages. Some of their workers have fallen ill with the viruses. Others have quit. They say, no more. I just don't want the risk of getting infected. And you know, even before all of this began, nursing homes had trouble attracting enough workers. The staff shortages have been there for years. Let's have a look at Ontario. Elective surgery is expected to resume shortly. No date yet from the Premier. The government first wants to make sure doctors and nurses who were reassigned to deal with the pandemic in nursing homes can be brought back to hospitals in a way that won't leave the nursing home short-staffed. And Ontario is easing up on other restrictions, retail stores, for example. And with that story, Eagle News correspondent Raisa Mangalit.
Thank you, Tom. Let's talk about some of the latest news from Ontario. Ontario Premier Doug Ford and other officials announced on May 6 that the provincial government will be easing restrictions on retail stores and essential construction as early as Friday last week.
I'm prepared to announce that as of Friday, May the 8th, at 12:01 a.m., garden centers and nurseries will be allowed to open. Furthermore, as of Saturday, May the 9th, at 12:01 a.m., hardware stores, safety supply stores will be allowed to reopen.
This is in line with the provincial government's goal to gradually ease the restriction on retail in order to support economic recovery from the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. Ontario government is also expanding essential construction to allow the low-grade multi-unit residential construction projects to begin, such as construction of condominiums and apartments. All businesses, including retail and construction, are required to comply with the Ministry of Health's guidance document for essential workplaces, as well as occupational health and safety requirements.
We are providing clear workplace safety guidance so businesses know what they need to do. As the Premier mentioned, more than 60 guidance documents have been released, and they can be accessed at covid19.ontario.ca. Our advice comes from the real world. We're learning from the experience of essential businesses in our provinces that have remained open during the pandemic. And I'm grateful that businesses and organizations have responded to our request to share lessons learned, including emergency childcare operators and retailers. It also includes the government's own retail operations.
Businesses must also follow public health measures and promote physical distancing, frequent sanitation, and hand washing, as well as the installment of necessary physical barriers, staggering shifts, and using contactless payment options to stop the spread of the virus.
Any reopening of our economy will be gradual, measured, and safe. As we watch the trends carefully every day, as we see the number of new cases inch downward, we've been preparing to get more and more of our economy working again safely and cautiously. Because when it comes to reopening our economy, I'd rather be safe than sorry. We've been working around the clock to make sure we're ready. We're using this time to help businesses adapt to the new environment we face. That's why over the past few weeks, we've laid the groundwork for the gradual and safe reopening. We released a framework with clear public health criteria to meet before proceeding to each stage of reopening.
And that is all for Ontario News for this morning. Back to you, Tom.
You know, other provinces are also beginning to reopen this week. Bits and pieces. It's going to vary in different parts of the country. And all of this prompted Prime Minister Trudeau to give Canadians this warning again this morning.
Our purpose is to keep large Canadian companies on their feet and protect the millions of jobs they provide. The goal here is not to fix pre-existing insolvencies or restructurings, nor is it to provide low-cost lending to companies that don't need it.
That was the Prime Minister commenting on an aid package for big business. We'll be talking about that later in the program. But the message that he gives is something that experts have been repeating for weeks now about what the foreseeable future will look like. You know, you've got to continue social distancing if you want to avoid a second wave of the coronavirus. Infectious disease experts say, wait a minute before opening to up. Be cautious. They say the risk has not changed just because, you know, the reopening plans have been announced. You know, you can announce your plans, but that hasn't changed anything because there's still no protection. There's no vaccine. We haven't built up any immunity. It's unlikely there'll be a vaccine for at least a year to 18 months. And how do you treat this? The only way to treat coronavirus is symptomatic treatment. What does that mean? That means there's no cure, there's no drug, there's no magic bullet. You treat the symptoms and hope the symptoms aren't too bad, because then the patient isn't going to make it. So all that our measures have done, all this social distancing, all this lockdown has done, is slowed the spread of the virus. But the virus is still here, and it's looking hard for new places to infect. Dr. Craig Jen of the University of Calgary is quoted as saying, these are his words. This is the example he gives. I like it because it just puts it in such clear, ordinary language terms. This is an epidemiologist talking. It only takes one person going to grab dinner at a restaurant. That one person can infect 2 or 3 others. Then each of them infect 2 or 3 others. And by the end of the week, we've got a cluster of several hundred cases. Now, before I leave this topic, let's take a look back at history. 102 years ago. 102 years ago is when the Spanish flu pandemic hit. Started in the spring, just like this, in the spring of 1918. There was a second wave that fall, okay? And a third wave in the spring of 1919. Was it over? No, not yet. A fourth wave in the spring of 1920. 4 waves of infection. That's what we must avoid. So let's not be complacent. Let's not protest too much. And I'll have a story on protests and some words from our chief medical officer in the Eagle News International program coming up. But we don't want to be complacent because this is not over by a long shot. A quick update I just received on the COVID-19 outbreak at the Cargill meat processing plant in High River in southern Alberta. A second worker has died. That worker fell ill last month. You'll recall more than 900 of the 2,000 workers at the plant were infected. About half the workforce comes from High River's Filipino community. That plant was shut down for 14 days and reopened a week ago. Still to come, big business in Canada will receive some government help. And you don't like the story of the ugly. You remember that kind of kid's tale, that kid's story, the story of the ugly duckling? Well, this rock quarry transformed into something beautiful, just like the ugly duckling. Oh, and we'll have an idea for a quick dinner for you. You're watching Eagle News Mornings from Canada.
This program is presented by SMC Infrastructure, building a better world. Sanmig Sugar-Free White Coffee, puno ng white coffee taste without the sugar, kaya lower calories. Try mo na, Sanmig Sugar-Free White Coffee. Sarap ng white coffee, now sugar-free. Vet-approved Nutri-Chunks, the only premium dog food with active boost for optimum energy and prebiotics that help strengthen immunity. Just like Catherine Bernardo, gawing listo ganado ang fur babies nyo. Listo ganado sa Nutri-Chunks. Co-presented by Kubert, expert in air conditioning and electromechanical. Also engaged in structural, electrical, fire protection, plumbing, and sanitary services. Kubert, your ultimate MEPS and air conditioning solutions. Vita Herbs Philippines Green Coffee, masarap, mabango, at healthy pa. Canrib Corporation, your ventilation and air conditioning specialist. New San Jose Builders Incorporated. Unlad Incorporated International, fight against global poverty. In participation with Rain or Shine Elastomeric Waterproofing Paint, color for protection for your home. Matimco. Matimco is wood. Wood is Matimco. R Square Variables Incorporated, your trusted UPS supplier and UPS maintenance provider in Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. CompuZell Computer Services, ID card and lanyard manufacturer. Saisho International Trading Corporation. DN Steel. EMAT UPVC Roof Corporation.
Hey, Gretchen Ho here, and I'm a white coffee lover. Creamy kasi, and very yummy. Pero mas masarap kung hindi nakaka-guilty. Check my new discovery, San-Made Sugar-Free White Coffee. Puno ng white coffee taste without the sugar, kaya lower calories. Try mo na! San-Made Sugar-Free White Coffee. Sarap ng white coffee, now sugar-free.
The Bulacan Bulk Water Project is a treatment facility that will provide bulk water to the 24 municipalities of Bulacan to meet the increasing water demand of its residents. Through concessionaire, SMC Infrastructure also initiated the significant improvements of the Manila North Harbor Port, the country's busiest port.
Listo at ganado ang baby ko sa vet-approved Nutri-Chunks with active boost and prebiotics na pampalisto. Made with real meat, with essential nutrients to help them grow healthy and happy. Listo, ganado sa Nutri-Chunks.
Ikaw lang ang star ng buhay ko. Para sa akin, perfect ka. Ibang klase ang sarap ng corned beef mo. Ang cheesy ng corned beef mo. Pag Star Chunky Cheese Corned Beef, sarap ng corned beef, inangat pa ng real cheese cubes. Kaya perfect ang sarap. Star Chunky Cheese Corned Beef.
This is Eagle News Mornings from Canada. I'm Thomas Lightness. Well, Prime Minister Trudeau put on his banker's hat today as he announced loans for big business. Up until now, help has been given to small and medium-sized businesses in Canada trying to stay alive during the pandemic. He says these loans, though, will help the really large employers. These are companies that have revenues of $300 million or more. It'll help them weather the challenges of the pandemic, and these loans are repayable. There is no forgivable portion to it. All that money has to go back. Trudeau stresses these loans are not bailouts. He says the government wants to see the companies remain solvent and save jobs.
Our purpose is to keep large Canadian companies on their feet and protect the millions of jobs they provide. The goal here is not to fix pre-existing insolvencies or restructurings, nor is it to provide low-cost lending to companies that don't need it.
Now, Trudeau adds that there are other strings that are going to be attached to these loans.
Those include maintaining jobs and investment, respecting collective agreements and pension obligations, and environmental and climate commitments. In particular, there will be strict limits on dividends, share buybacks, and executive compensation. To stand strong against tax avoidance and tax evasion, we will require companies to share with us their complete financial structure as they apply for funding.
Trudeau says these loans are there to protect workers, not to enrich corporate executives. Now, some of the benefactors could include airlines. We've got a couple of airlines here that are virtually shut down, and they really don't know just how they're going to be able to start up. Some of the large oil companies, energy companies, and so on. But again, there's those strict guidelines on there. It's not a bailout. This is not a handout to enrich corporate executives. We're going to take you on a short tour now of which, well, this was probably the ugliest sight in British Columbia more than 100 years ago. And arguably today, it's probably one of the most beautiful. Butchart Gardens in Victoria. I don't know whether you've ever heard of it. If you've been over here in Canada, you probably have. It had its humble beginnings as a limestone quarry. Robert Butchart, he was the guy who bought the land. He built his house right on the edge of this quarry. He mined that quarry for his cement company because that's what they make cement out of, is limestone. By 1909, no more limestone. The quarry was exhausted. His wife, Jenny, well, she had a vision. She said, you can't leave it looking like that, Bob. You can't leave it looking like that. So she hired a bunch of landscaping architects, I guess you'd call them these days. She had this vision to turn it into this huge sunken garden. 12 years later, it was completed. 1921. It's still around today. Beautiful place. My wife and I were there. We went there right after we were married. Anyway, Eagle News correspondent Jeanette Doiseau is going to take us on a quick tour of the world-famous Butchart Gardens.
So here we are. We made it to Butchart Gardens after it has been closed since March 26. Now it is open, taking visitors to see the gardens, the Butchart Gardens, known world-class tourist destination here on the island. As you can see, there's not much people around, and if there are, they're observing physical distancing. To this area here, usually people will be lining up to take a picture right on the entrance of the garden. So as you can see right now, it's quite empty. There used to be right here, they used to have like a giant chessboard that people, like usually children, will play. So now they've taken that off. All the benches are gone and the stores are closed, like the gift shop is closed. The coffee shop is open, but only for takeout, as well as there's an information center. So it's very different. This is a very different site for a major tourist attraction. So here we are, right at the entrance of the Butchart Gardens. So we'll go in and check out the flowers. So here we go. Let's go. So here, this is the start. So this is now only one way. People cannot just go in it. So there's only one way. And they're very strict on social distancing. In Victoria, British Columbia, Jeanette Doiseau, Eagle News, we live in interesting times.
And I definitely want to make it back there. That is just truly a beautiful place. Take it in if you're over there. Well, do you like tuna? I love it. You know, there's so many ways to prepare it. I don't know whether there's a bad way to prepare it. Now, this recipe is one I hadn't heard of before, and we'll be trying it out soon. It's called tuna pie, and Eagle News correspondent Rachel Lucis has the recipe for us.
Hello po everyone, I'm Rachel Lucis, and today we're gonna be cooking. I'm sure a lot of you are pretty bored as of this moment. Some of you might be even craving snacks that you might want to try again. Fear not! Today I'm gonna be showing you a quick, simple, and easy snack that you can make at home. We are gonna be making our homemade special tuna pie. Let's get started.
Here are the ingredients that you will be needing in making a tuna pie. Bread crushed off and flattened, panko breadcrumbs and cornflakes, egg wash, spicy and sun-dried tomato-flavored tuna, mayonnaise and spices, and cheddar cheese. So the first step that we are gonna do is mix the mayonnaise and spices together with the tuna. Your spices depends on what you want and what is available to you. I use togarashi spice, salt and pepper, and Italian spice. For the next step, we are going to place the bread on a clean cutting board, scoop a spoonful of tuna filling into the middle of the bread, add the cheese, fold it, and then crimp it with a fork. For this time, I repeated the process with the sun-dried tomato-flavored tuna. You can also experiment with different flavors depending on what's available in your local market. You can even make it ham and cheese, or a dessert type like a mango pie. Now, we are going to mix the cornflakes and panko breadcrumbs. And let the breading begin. First, we are going to dip it in egg wash. Then, we are going to bread it with the panko and cornflake mixture. Now, here's a tip. Cornflakes gives it a crunchy texture, and you can also use chips for added flavor and texture. Now it's ready for some action. We are going to deep fry it. Now at this point, you should always make sure to test if your oil is hot. Otherwise, your pie will get soggy when submerged to oil for a long time. And now we wait until it's golden brown. Here's the finished product. Would you like to try some?
In Calgary, Canada, Rachel Lucis, Eagle News. We live in interesting times.
Yeah, I just had breakfast and I'm hungry again. Before I leave, Fox got me again. Just want to remind you, lots to watch on ABC Digital Nest Home Edition. Be sure to join Julie and Tuna for that program. Check it out on Facebook and YouTube. And before we go, I want to wish our Canadian Bureau Chief, the boss of all of us here, Jay Suarez. It's his birthday today. Happy birthday, Jay. That's our program for today. Thank you for watching. On behalf of the entire Canadian News team, I wish you all good health. Take care of others. Take care of yourselves. Stay home, stay safe, and stay tuned to Eagle News for accurate and balanced coverage of the COVID-19 pandemic. In Edmonton, Canada, Thomas I. Likeness, Eagle News. We live in interesting times.